Wisdom Wave.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Wisdom Wave. I'm Kholod Lebzo, and as always, it's a pleasure to be your host. We've launched Wisdom Wave with Professor Christina Schobenland, who helped set the tone for deep, meaningful conversations around leadership, research, and the power of education. Today, we've come a full circle with another key leader from the University of Bedfordshire, someone whose first visit to Jordan marks a major milestone in the UK-Jordan academic collaboration. He's with us here today in Amman to celebrate the official launch of 3 new UK-hosted PhD programs in technology, health, and social research, expanding a model that has already enabled over 500 graduates, including more than 40 PhD students, to earn globally recognized degrees without having to leave Jordan. I'm honored to welcome Professor Andrew Church, Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation at the University of Bedfordshire. Professor Church, welcome to Wisdom Wave and welcome to Jordan.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Professor Church, how has it been for you in Jordan so far? Have you done much?
Okay, it's my first visit to Jordan. I've only been here 2 days, but my experience is it's a very welcoming country. Delighted to be here. I've got time at the end of my work to go off to Petra and Wadi Rum, which are world-leading tourism and heritage sites, so I'm really looking forward to that. And Jordan's been very welcoming. It's been a pleasure.
Any cultural shocks so far?
In the UK, I'm very lucky in that I live near good public transport. I very rarely drive anywhere, so I walk a lot. And Jordanians should walk more. Walking's good for your health, but perhaps not in Amman. Crossing the road is an extraordinary moment. Luckily, I've had a guide to show me that you just walk out into the middle and expect the cars to stop. So that's a bit of a culture shock, but I'm getting used to it.
So what does this visit mean to you professionally, though, especially as part of your role as Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research?
For me professionally, international exchange through education is fundamental to building a strong global society. Not only does it lead to the exchange of ideas and knowledge, but it builds relationships between countries, something I've always believed strongly in, so this visit is a real pleasure for me. The other pleasing part of it is I've met alumni and students. As a Pro-Vice Chancellor, you're in management, you don't often get to meet the students. So it's been a wonderful morning meeting enthusiastic PhD and Master's students, proud to have graduated from Middle East University.
Yeah, I would imagine. And the fact that you were here for the launch of the 3 extra programs for the PhD, what does that symbolize for you?
For me, the launch this morning of 3 new PhD pathways in applied computing, applied health and social research has been a real milestone moment in the collaboration between the University of Bedfordshire and MEU, in that we've had 2 successful pathways so far, business and management and media, and now we're going up to 5. So it's a real step change in terms of the numbers of students we'll be working together on. And it's just wonderful to come to an event that's not only moving forward, but celebrating the success of the past.
Yeah, that is so true. You know, PhD programs that are UK based are much more, they're very different than PhD programs here in Jordan. I don't know, do you know this?
Yeah. I think there are many countries that have PhD programs that are much more taught-based, where you go to classes regularly and you follow a clear pathway. The UK model has always been much more about a focus on research and about the individual. And I think there are advantages and disadvantages of both approaches, but the UK one does produce people who have excellent research skills that they've developed and honed themselves. And I think that creates also entrepreneurial individuals, many of whom, of course, nowadays do not go into academia. They go off into industry, they go off into government, they go off into the health sector. So having those individual research skills that you've honed yourself is a real advantage if you move out of academia into other industries.
That's really interesting because usually when someone gets a PhD, you would think that they're going into academia, when really more and more we've been noticing more people who are not. They're going into different paths, different careers.
Yes, things have really changed in terms of the careers people with PhDs do. When I did my PhD, it was a route into academia. It was your apprenticeship to be an academic. Now in the UK, when a cohort of people start a PhD, about 70% of them want to go into academia. So a third are already planning to go into other industries. Of those 70%, only about 30% make it. So a lot of people who want to be an academic don't end up in academia. So it's really important in a PhD programme that students are trained in a range of skills, and that's certainly something we do in the Bedfordshire MEU programme. We provide a whole range of training so people are skilled to go into other industries. And I think it's very positive for societies like Jordan if people with PhDs go and work in other industries, because they bring a range of skills that are a specialist, but also because they've done a PhD, they've thought how to apply that knowledge in an innovative way. So a PhD is not just about acquiring research skills, it's also about thinking how you can innovate with those skills.
Yeah, it's totally different. It's not been done as much, so it is actually very interesting. Speaking of research, you know, Bedfordshire is known for focusing on research that responds to real-world problems. Do you have any idea how the university's research creates value outside of the UK as well, especially through partnerships and collaborations?
Yeah. We pride ourselves on being a university where the research has impact. And if I can give you some examples of how we've built partnerships to create that impact, because you rarely create that impact on your own. You need to work with partners and other organisations. So if I take my colleague, Professor Gertrude Andahar, who's a specialist in organ donation policy, and he's worked particularly in Qatar, but in other Muslim countries, to develop policies to increase rates of organ donation. So he started doing this with minority ethnic communities in the UK, and he suddenly realised he had ideas about how you encourage people to donate organs that could be applied in other Muslim countries, and he's gone off and done that. So starting with a small pilot in the UK, but then building international networks to have impact around the world, and it really has done that. It's increased organ donation rates, which is so important as we become an ageing society, that we need people to donate organs. Yes. So that's one example. If I give you another good example of where research has really had impact. Sorry, I just thought of one. I'll come back in a minute. I've got 3 or 4 going around in my head, so that's a good one. Oh, yeah, I'll give you a science one. So that's one example. Another example I'd like to take from applied sciences, and particularly computing. We have a team that's very focused on artificial intelligence and robotics, and they received, along with a number of other universities, a major £5 million grant from the European Union to look at artificial intelligence and robotics for robots that work in crisis zones, searching out people in areas where there's been an earthquake or another natural disaster. And
like get them out.
Yeah, and that was done with a Spanish robotics company who's now patenting that technology to apply it all around the world to improve how robots operate in periods of crisis and natural disaster.
Proper use of AI.
Yes, AI is a real challenge for universities at the moment.
It really is.
To begin with, of course, it was seen as a problem and a threat, and it was all going to be about students cheating.
Yeah.
But universities have dealt fairly quickly with that and developed AI policies and good online systems for searching out AI-generated work and developed new ways of teaching. Now I think we're moving much more into the stage where we have to recognise the opportunity of AI for university education.
Make it a friend, not a foe.
Yeah, and teach students how to use it to their benefit, to the benefit of society, but also in particular to use it ethically.
Yes, yes. I remember when it was first introduced, because I was a literature major, so I wrote loads and loads of essays throughout my bachelor's degree, and we didn't have AI, it wasn't a thing. And you know, when you're writing an essay and you're just point blank, like, how do I start? How do I start? So I think when ChatGPT, when I started using it, I remember, oh, it's going to help me with the first segment, and I'll get my thoughts straight, and I'll be good to go. And that's how I started using it until I found out that that's not how the rest of the students are using it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's a real opportunity for universities to play a really important economic role, because universities are where you have some of the most skilled and talented people in artificial intelligence. The UK has a vision of being an AI hub in Europe, And to do that, we've recognised we need to develop skills, and we're very lucky. We have a lot of talented skilled people in universities. We need to develop more infrastructure, particularly data centres. But the key thing we need to do is ensure our businesses and our public sector adopt AI. Now, one of the key things universities are doing in Britain are training programmes for individuals in government, in local government, in hospitals, in businesses, in how to adopt AI. And that's crucial, because those people who are then trained can go off and train other people. Yeah. We have to recognise that adoption is one of the key challenges of AI, and I think universities have got a really important role to play there.
That is so true. Well, we've went off a little bit.
Yeah, that's all right. No, it's good.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Honestly, it's hard to have a conversation without mentioning AI these days.
Yeah, I was going to bring it in anyway, so we've done it. That's good.
Awesome. So let's turn to something that's a bit close to home, DARBNA's initiative, which supports women in academia. You know, the podcast itself is a part of DARBNA's initiative, and it's been a key pillar for our partnership with the University of Bedfordshire. Can you tell us how DARBNA fits into Bedfordshire's broader commitment to equity and opportunity?
Okay, so the University of Bedfordshire has a very diverse student body by gender and by ethnicity. And as a result, we have a very strong commitment to ensuring all our students and all our staff benefit from the university, and we have strong EDI policies. This DARBNA initiative is very pleasing, because we realised early on in the Bedfordshire MEU PhD programme that a high proportion of the students are women, and about 65% of them are female. And as a result, discussions developed between the staff in MEU and at Bedfordshire about how we could build on this. So we applied to the British Council for funding to support the DARBNA initiative, and that's about empowering women through networking. Yeah. And then we've just got another grant from another British organisation called the British Academy for a project called Beacon that is about empowering women through entrepreneurship and digital innovation. So those sort of initiatives are at the core of what we do as a university. We have a strong emphasis on equalities. We have staff networks around, well, we have a women's network, we have a race network, we have a disability network. So we're promoting equalities in a number of different ways, involving all our staff in the conversation. But the DARBNA initiative is very specific, and it's wonderful to have built things on the PhD programme that are new and empower women in different ways.
Yeah, because the hosted PhD students here in Jordan, it's made it possible for women who might not be able to go out and study abroad to get this advanced research degree while still being here in Jordan, because it might be harder for women specifically to go for whatever reason.
No, I mean it's a very powerful part of the project.
It is.
In that, as you say, some women in Jordan can't go and study abroad, so this gives an opportunity to get PhDs at home. I think I should also say we feel the programme is of very high quality. The people who get onto it have high levels of skills, good English language, and all of them, bar one person, have completed in the 3-year time period, which is incredible. So and I think
I actually didn't know that.
No, and many of them are women, and it's their determination.
I've heard most of them are women.
Yeah, and there's this determination to get this done and move on to a new career.
Yeah.
So I think the programme, we knew at the beginning this might be an aspect of it, but it's become far more significant than we ever imagined. And now having the DARBNA funding and the Beacon project funding, we can go on and ensure that the female students network each other, help each other with digital innovation in the future, and that there's also an alumni network built on that programme.
So what are the 5 programs that are hosted here in the Middle East University through the University of Bedfordshire?
So we've had the 2 that have been going since 2019 in business and in media. And we're now moving into, interestingly, areas where often women are less represented. Well, no, we're moving into applied computing, where women are less represented, but we're also moving into health and applied social research, where often there are lots of women undergraduate students that we hope will end up on the programme. I think the really important thing to ensure is that our recruitment processes here in Jordan are fair and have a strong equalities dimension to make sure we recruit women, particularly into the applicable computing programme. These things take time, but change does happen. Yeah. When I started as an academic in British universities, there were hardly any female leaders of British universities. Now we're up to about 40%. And women have changed the way universities work very positively and the way knowledge is generated. So it takes account of gender and understands equalities issues. So I hope this programme will go on playing its role in empowering women and building female capacity in Jordan.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. Well, before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your reflections for our listeners, many of whom are aspiring researchers. What would you say to someone, male or female, who is considering a PhD but is unsure if it's the right step? What kind of opportunities can a research degree open up, not just in academia, but in society?
Okay. I think I'd say to anybody who's thinking about doing a PhD and has a desire for that as a life goal, to try and go ahead and do it. Because if you don't do it, you might often live with regrets. And I think what's really important is that you choose the right topic and you work carefully with your potential supervisor to develop that topic. So here at MEU, for applicants to the PhD programme, they run application surgeries so that the students can work with the potential supervisor and the staff here to ensure that the topic they're going to do is the right one for them. So my advice to anybody thinking about it is do it if it's a real life goal, because otherwise you might live with regret. But work with the university you're applying to make sure you do the PhD in the right area. And I would just say, when you then get on a PhD programme, recognise how incredible it is. This is a rare moment in life where you have a lot of control over what you're doing. And I think it's often only when people finish their PhD they realise how special that period is. So if you're thinking about it, do it, but get advice to make sure you get the right topic.
No, because I'm thinking of doing a PhD.
I think that desire to do a PhD is often very strong in people. And I think if you're young and you don't do it, you might regret it in later life. But also, older people do PhDs. They come back to it. And we see a lot of mature students in Britain doing PhDs. And again, they've got to that point where they realise this has always been a lifetime ambition and they want to fulfil it. But again, get the right topic. You're working on this for 3 years. You want it to be something you're really passionate about.
Age is really important for me because I'm thinking like if I start now, when I'm done, I'll be 30.
Well, I think okay, that's the case. But PhDs open up opportunities in other industries besides academia. We're now seeing, for instance, in the UK, it's very difficult for universities to hold on to the best maths PhD students because they're all getting jobs in finance industries, in the health sector, where their mathematical skills are so needed, partly because of the growth of artificial intelligence. And I think when you're doing a PhD, one of the things I'd stress to any student is think about the skills you're acquiring other than research and the ways you can develop those, whether it's communication skills, networking skills, so that you're equipped for a job outside academia if you want to go in that direction.
I think, honestly, this is resonating.
Well, don't delay.
No.
Speak to people at MEU. They'll help you with the application. I'm marketing the programme now, but anyway. I'll look forward to seeing you start next year.
Okay, Professor Church, thank you so much for being with us today, for sharing your insights, your vision, and your belief in the power of research to create real, impactful change. And to our listeners, whether you're a student wondering if a PhD is right for you, a researcher looking to make an impact, or someone simply curious about where knowledge can take you, let this be your reminder. You don't need to cross oceans to think globally. Sometimes the most meaningful research starts right where you are. Until next time, I'm Kholod Lebzo, and this is Wisdom Wave. Thank you. Bye.
Wisdom Wave.